Level up your LA Kings experience with Vivid Seats Elite Seats. All the on-ice Kings action with even more exclusive access and rewards. Enjoy great seats to the game in Section 103 along with Yamava Club access and parking included with your purchase. Plus, get a free Team LA Kings shop item at the game. Score your Vivid Seats Elite Seats tickets today and earn perks on each purchase from the only leading ticket company with a rewards program. Experience it live with Vivid Seats, the official partner of the LA Kings. Did you know the LA Kings have their own culinary partner? It's Superfood, celebrating 10 years and over 1 million meals served. Since 2020, the Kings have trusted Superfood to fuel their players. Now through Simply Lunch, you can bring that same performance-driven food to your office. Because when people eat better, they work better. Visit mysuperfood.com. That's mysuperfd.com. Or call 213-973-6145. Qualified companies can enjoy a free lunch for up to 10 managers.
You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings. Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
Welcome back, Kings fans. This is, emergency feels like too strong a word, but emergency episode of All the Kings Men, joined by Zach Dooley. How are you doing today, Zach?
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So listen, we're here. Zach and I were 15 minutes ago in the press conference with DJ Smith. Jim Hiller was relieved of his duties as head coach. DJ Smith was announced as interim head coach. And Zach, before we get into talking about the decision, I would like to tell a story that I don't think I have publicly told before. For those who don't know, and I'm assuming everybody watching this does, I was diagnosed with lymphoma last February. Before my diagnosis was made public, or before anybody on the team knew, I had just been away from the team in the hospital, and Jim Hiller, I don't know that anybody told him to do it or asked him to do it, but he mentioned me by name in a post-game press conference and said that they couldn't wait for me to be back, and that he was sure that I was watching, and that meant a tremendous amount to me to hear my name come out of the mouth of a head coach in a post-game presser. After that was very public. About a month later, as I was sitting at home in bed trying to make sense of my life, I got a phone call from Jim Hiller. And he wished me well and offered anything that I needed. And so just on a personal level, I have always had an incredible soft spot for Jim Hiller. Like, he didn't have to do that. I'm nobody, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just a guy around the team. And he heard what happened to me, and he reached out on his own. Didn't go through official channels. I didn't get a note through the office or anything. He reached out to me and was very kind and very gracious. And DJ Smith today in his opening press conference mentioned Jim Hiller and said that he was a good man. And I believe that. I mean, my experience with Jim Hiller, limited as it may be, was that he was an incredibly good person. I met one of his children. She seemed lovely. He seems like a lovely person, lovely man, a great dad. And it's tough when I say this is somebody who's been there. It's hard to be happy about somebody losing a job. This is professional sports. Everybody loses their job eventually. Players age out. Executives, coaches are relieved of duties. It happens. So I get it from a certain perspective. There are fans who have been calling for this, who will be happy about it. But on a personal note, there are other things coloring my reaction to all of this. And I just wanted to get that out there and just say thank you to Jim Hiller personally for what he has meant to me.
I'm glad you told the story because I knew it. I'm sure a lot of people didn't know it, right? You've never, you said it publicly. But I think it just kind of sums up who he is as a person. Like, it's the stuff that he did behind the scenes that I don't think people know about. And I just, his personality never translated to the public sphere. And I think, it just never came off in interviews and those types of things the way that it really was. But this is a really good guy who had a good personality, who was funny and who treated the people on the other side of the camera with so much respect, I think, most days.
Yep.
It just says it all, what he did for you in that moment. And just the kind of person he is.
Moments that may have come across as awkward on camera after games or whatever, I always gave him a tremendous pass because it wasn't that different from how he behaved when not on camera. So what might have seemed as like aloof or whatever was just like, no, that's
it's just kind of who he
That's
was.
just,
you know,
it's just kind of how he talks.
And it wasn't that awkward when you were there.
Right.
But then you watched it back, and
Mm-hmm.
if you didn't know or you weren't in the room, you'd be like, it just never was reflective of who I think we both and anyone I think who covered the team day to day. Like, there aren't that many people who do that, but I think that we would all know the kind of person that he was.
This is a tortured metaphor or analogy, whatever, but like, imagine inviting a complete stranger to a family dinner, you know, or a family reunion where everybody knows each other, everybody has familiar dynamics and relationships, and some people talk to each other a little bit differently than they would when they were in public. To me, that was what happened when Jim Hiller would wind up on the national stage.
Yeah.
It was like, no, that's just
Jimmy.
It's just how Jim talks.
Yeah.
So anyway, moving on from that, Ken Holland addressed the media. Now, I want to also say, Zach and I just were bombarded with a ton of information, and I didn't take notes and we didn't have time to collect our thoughts. We're just launching right into this. So I'm going to try and remember everything that was said. Ken Holland addressed the media. He opened with a statement and thanked Jim Hiller and said what must be said in this scenario. Yep. And then took questions. Matt Green will be an interim assistant coach.
Yep.
I
Obviously,
will say
DJ Smith.
Yes, DJ Smith is replacing
taking over
Jim.
as the
Yeah,
interim
thank
head
you.
coach.
Sorry, I should have made that clear. I was impressed not only with Ken Holland's straightforwardness and frankness, but also DJ Smith's. I asked him when he or if he asked Matt Green if he wanted to be an assistant coach, and he told us in stark detail the entire conversation. I was not expecting that, because he said he made the decision to relieve Jim Hiller of his duties on Friday, the day after the Edmonton game.
Yep.
But he said he didn't want to do it on Friday because it was a day off, and he didn't feel it was fair to the team to have to go into the Calgary game.
Yep.
I'm
sounded like
using
Friday
the word
night
fair.
too.
Yes.
It didn't sound like,
yes.
you know,
he thought about
he
it all
woke
day
up,
Friday.
right? Like, he, by the end of the day, Friday, that's where he landed.
But felt it wouldn't be right to force the team to go into Saturday's game at 4 p.m. without a morning skate, without a practice, new coach. So he waited a day.
Yep.
And when asked about Matt Green, said he asked Matt Green during the second intermission of the Edmonton game.
Yeah.
Not specifically
of the
outright.
Calgary game.
Oh, was it? Yeah, sorry, of the Calgary
game.
Sorry, of the Calgary game, and didn't say, "Would you like to be assistant coach?" But said, "Should the occasion arise that we make moves, would you be interested in being assistant coach?" And Matt Green said yes, and so here we are. Matt Green's the assistant coach. A lot of his questions, I would say, are open to interpretation. So I'll simply ask you. My takeaway from talking to Ken Holland is that I don't anticipate any significant trades before the deadline.
Significant, probably not. What I learned was that the first round pick is not moving in 2026.
Yes. That was another one where I felt was like,
I thought it was pretty
interpretive. But
I thought it was pretty clear.
He mentioned it. He wasn't asked about it.
Correct. He went out of his way to say that right now the first round pick is in the top 10.
Yeah.
That's a lottery pick.
Yeah.
So now if Connor McDavid becomes available,
sure,
which he won't, but if a player of long-term importance becomes available, where you say, okay, now we have our 1 seed next year, that's probably an outside the box scenario. But I don't think that this team will be looking to recklessly add.
Yes.
Which I think was a concern going in, right? Because you see external reports that I think were probably untrue of like the Kings are going all in, the Kings are doing X, Y. And I don't think that that's what's going on here. I think that the Kings made a big move to get Panarin, but that was a move for next year as much as it was for this year, right? They signed him to the 2-year extension. Without that, they don't do it. They don't make that move. So I would agree with you that significant, maybe not, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were new faces, if the roster looked different Friday afternoon than it does.
The reason I say
Sunday
it that way
afternoon.
is when he was asked, he said pretty defiantly, I don't know if that's the right word, but like he said, we made the Panarin trade.
Right.
We made a big move.
They did, yeah.
If they had made the big move at the end of the Olympic break, that would be considered a deadline move.
Right.
They made it right before the Olympic break, and so 3 weeks go by.
Yeah.
And even though, as far as like space of actual allowable time between the time of the trade and the deadline, was pretty small.
The Kings probably acquired the most prominent player who will move this season
100%.
in Panarin, right?
But then he also mentioned that he believes that the team has, I think he said 12 or 13 or 14 NHL forwards on the roster.
Yep.
And then I'm backtracking a little bit, but in his previous media availability, he was directly asked about changing the defense.
Yep.
And said he had no intention of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, since then, things have changed.
Yep.
He also said that he wasn't, we'll get into this in a second, but like obviously the two losses to Vegas and Edmonton caused the change at head coach, but they weren't exclusively responsible.
It seemed like it wasn't, the thought didn't enter his head after the Edmonton loss or the Vegas loss, right? It was already in his head that, okay, he seemed pretty unhappy with how the Kings ended going into the break, and those were a couple of duds, right? The Seattle game and the Vegas game were not good losses. But he said, okay, does this break reset us? Do we come out like it sounds like, do they come out the way DJ Smith said they want to come out coming forward? The answer was clearly no.
Yeah.
You lose to a Vegas team down 5 players, you lose 8-1. I mean, probably the worst 48 hours of the season, the exact opposite of what they wanted for a response. So I think that's why the timing was what it was. And it's like it just had to be done, and you hate to say it because we're talking about the person who we both respect a lot, who we both liked personally a lot, and who really tried his best and tried to do a lot of things to get things going in the right direction. It just became clear that it had to be done now in order to give the team a chance going into the postseason. And it just kind of sucks to say that, but I think the timing,
that's professional sports.
It just is what it is, and that's what had to be done.
It reminds me, I mean, I guess this is the double-edged sword of working in professional sports. I feel the same way I did when John Stevens was let go in early 2018-19. Now that was early in the season. I think it was like 11 games in the season or something like that. But what I said then is what I will say now. I'm not entirely sure that the head coach bears the full blame for what happened, but at the end of the day, it is the head coach's responsibility.
Yeah.
And if you can't stop what's going wrong, it's just as bad as being to blame for it.
Yeah.
And so
DJ Smith actually had a great answer kind of about that.
Yeah.
And he's a fired NHL, like he's gone through this. He was fired mid-season, I believe, in Ottawa.
Yeah.
Similar circumstances, team, just didn't meet expectations, but he said when you take that job, like a good leader owns 100% of what happened.
Yeah.
And that's what, the player said. Jim fell on the sword, but we spoke with Andrei Kopitar and Adrian Kempe today, 2 team leaders, who both said we have to play better. Like we have to perform better, I think was Kopitar's words. And like they bear their share in the responsibility as well. The guys above them bear their, like it's not just Jim Hiller, but he today is the only guy who I guess is, I don't know what the word of. So he's the only guy who doesn't work here anymore.
What impressed me the most about today was when asked direct questions, Ken Holland gave direct, full detailed answers.
Extremely, right?
When asked sort of open to interpretation questions, he gave open to interpretation answers. DJ Smith, what's the expression the kids use? I was not familiar with your game. Like, wow. I did not factor that.
That was an impressive press conference.
Like, holy smokes. I'm struggling to remember. So one of the things
I would implore fans to watch that 17 minutes in full and really listen to what he had to say. Don't read the selects posted on Twitter.
Yeah. Watch
because they're gonna be pulled with an agenda.
And you'll just get a soundbite about a specific thing. But like
watch the full answers and listen to what he said. And I was just really impressed with what he had to say.
My biggest takeaway from the DJ Smith availability was somebody asked him a narrative that I have heard before and that I have somewhat casually dismissed.
Yeah, same.
And it was, did the playoff loss last year stick with this team?
Yeah.
Like, is this team still sort of emotionally reeling from how they lost to Edmonton last year? And I'd heard people suggest that. I'd seen it on social media. And I kind of thought like, well, that's just silly.
Same.
Like that's of course that's not what it is. Mm-hmm. They're professionals. They've lost to Edmonton before. It can't be that simple.
Right.
And DJ Smith was asked that, and cynically sitting there, I was like kind of rolling my eyes going like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
Like this question, like we're going to waste time with this question. DJ Smith, without missing a beat, said, yeah, that's what it is. And it stops today.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
So for him to acknowledge something that I had completely dismissed out of hand, I was like, okay. Like, I was loud wrong. Now I didn't say anything to anybody about it, but like, okay, clearly I was wrong.
Yeah.
Now maybe he's wrong. I don't know. But like, I would not have even entertained that notion.
Yeah. And
he just came out and said, last year has hung with us. It's stuck with us. This team has underperformed, and it stops today.
Yeah.
So to even acknowledge it is, I think, huge.
Yeah.
That really shocked me.
And he was positive, but not in a like toxic positivity way or in a you're clearly BSing me positive way. Like he talked about tangible things that they're going to do differently. He didn't say, he didn't give you any fluff about beating Colorado tomorrow. Like he acknowledged like, we're going to go out there. We had one practice for 30 minutes. We're going to go out there. We're probably going to do things similarly to how we did them because we had one practice. He didn't say, wow, we're going to go out there and make a statement again. Like he just said like, hey, this is a tough first game for us, but what an opportunity.
Yeah.
And I just really appreciated how he didn't come in and promise unrealistic things, but he focused on things that I actually think he can control. And he spoke about the same things that the players highlighted, which was the energy and the swagger and the confidence. And Adrian Kempe's quote, I thought really stuck with me, which was he said, when we go into games, we have to go in confident that we're going to win them, not hoping that we're going to win them. And he said there's a big difference in that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what DJ Smith is talking about too. Like this team has to start going into games. Both Kempe and DJ Smith said at home specifically too. Like we have to go into our building feeling better. Like the Kings have 9 wins at home this year after winning 31. Like that's awful. Like they have to go into these games and win them at home. And I just thought that I liked what he had to say on those areas.
Media availabilities are such a funny thing because on the one hand, they mean nothing, right? Like you can come in and say all the right things and sound brilliant and then go out and lose and go 0-23 for the rest of the season.
Like when we do the preseason 10 questions, right? Like it all looks good until you play the games.
Having said that, when someone has an opportunity to do a media availability like Ken Holland and DJ Smith did today, I would prefer they get an A+ than a D. Like, even though ultimately it doesn't matter. But DJ Smith, as far as I'm concerned, handled that about as perfectly as you could. I mean, every question he was asked, he gave an answer that I would not have expected that was the correct answer, right? He talked about leadership. He talked about the players need to take it on themselves. He talked about, I asked him kind of, it's a trick question, but I mean, I was being a bit snarky when I asked it. I said, like, every time somebody talks to the media, the team's identity as being defensively oriented is brought up. But, and what I didn't say in the question, but what I was heavily implying was you've allowed 22 goals in the last 4 games while not scoring any goals. So what needs to be fixed first? But the way I asked it was, which do you lean into harder? Preventing goals or scoring more goals? And he dodged the question and came back with a brilliant answer, which is you have to do both.
Right.
Which is the correct answer.
Because, he's right that, you can look at all these teams that score more goals than the Kings who are successful, and you are correct. But people always forget that Colorado defends really, really well.
They have allowed the fewest goals in the league while also scoring the most, which is why they're 1,000 times better than everybody else.
Florida has defended really well. Like, these are the teams at the top who they score more than the Kings, but they don't do it at the expense of the offensive side. And that's what he kind of leaned into.
I mean, I think he said you can't sacrifice.
No, and again, easier said than done, right? And he also said that this team has given up since Christmas. He said more odd man rushes again. Like, they got away from it. And he said, here is why we have done that. And that ends today. Like, the detail and the directness was pretty impressive.
And I mean, I asked him about the Byfield Moore and LaFerriere line, which, to be clear, has played with each other for less than 20 minutes?
One game.
And so I really liked them in that game. And to be fair, it was a subpar opponent, but against a subpar opponent, they were controlling play by a 2-1 margin. Like they looked good.
They were the best line.
Yeah, they were entertaining and they scored the goal. And so I was like, okay, more of that ? Because Trevor Moore is a player when paired with the right line mates
can be really effective.
Exponentially better than he is when not paired with the right line mates. And when you have this team where you're like, okay, we have a super high ceiling in like Kempe, Kopitar, Panarin, and then you have this fourth line that seems to identify itself, and then you have this kind of mushy middle where you're like, all right, well, who goes where? So I was just wondering, well, okay, that line seemed to click. He went into so much more detail about why that line is successful and what they hope to see from it and how they might plan on deploying it. I was not expecting any. I'm just so impressed with TJ Smith today.
You have asked a lot about the shutdown line, right, in the past. And I think he kind of, he approached it differently, which is that a shutdown line isn't there to simply shut down because of the best defense can be a good offense. Like, he wants those guys to play against other teams' number one lines and do so in the offensive zone.
Yeah, as he said, he wants them to have to defend that line just as hard as they're defending
and that's
them.
That's what the best type of line like that can do. And like all three of those guys are two-way players. They're competent and trusted defensively, but like if they're just in their own zone, it's a waste of those three players. So I liked how he talked about that line and saying like, yeah, I might match up with them, but I'm not doing it to neutralize. I'm doing it to take the Herb Brooks of like you take their game and you shove it back in their face.
He also, and I think you'll remember this. You remember when we talked to Trevor Moore, it's like 2 or 3 years ago, I think, and we were asking him about the power play. And he said that one of the things about the power play is you have to remember that the penalty kill is going to outwork you.
Yeah.
Because they're a man down. And so part of the way to be successful on the power play is you have to remember that and then outwork the PK who has already stepped up a little. Like, that's how successful power plays work. You have to work hard. You can't just sit back and enjoy the fact that you have extra man advantage.
Yeah.
When DJ Smith threw out that's what the power play, because we talked about the power play. And he mentioned, like, the power play has to outwork. Like I said, I mean, just A++ from DJ Smith.
His answer, like, the best power play the Kings have had in this month, because it's only been 5 games, was the one they scored on against Vegas.
Yes.
And
the one opportunity they got.
They did exactly what DJ Smith said, which was they shot it and they got it back.
Yeah, puck retrieval. Yeah.
And he said that's what the best power plays in the league do. The Oilers, and you look at any game the Kings play against the Oilers, why does it feel like the power play is 4 minutes long? Is because they don't leave the offensive zone.
Yeah.
They get the puck back and they reload. The Kings did it 3 or 4 times on that one sequence, and it made it feel like they were in there for 2 minutes when it was like 40 seconds because they just keep reloading.
Yeah, it's harder to outwork. As a penalty killer, it's harder to outwork your opponent if you never get off the ice.
If you're tired, right?
Constantly out there chasing the puck around. So obviously, like we said, it doesn't. And this also, DJ Smith also mentioned this, and I agree with Zach 100%. Go watch it if you're at all inclined. I didn't feel like there was any false promise of we're gonna turn it around, we're gonna make the playoffs. There was a lot of like, look, there's 23 games left. We've got to chase some teams down. It's going to be hard. We think we can do it. Here's what we're going to have to do it, fully understanding that they're in a tough spot. And if it doesn't work, I think everybody understands that the number one question will then be, well, why didn't you do it earlier?
Yeah.
Like if they miss the playoffs by 2 points, that's the number one question in the summer is like.
Honestly, you could even say if it does work.
Sure. If they lose them absolutely.
Well, meaning like, hey, like if the changes worked, then could they have worked?
That's
worked
fair.
Earlier. I understand what Ken Holland said, like about the timing. He said he didn't consider a change even until like the beginning of the month. It seemed like. Yeah,
but he also he didn't use the phrase that I have become very fond of, but he kind of heavily implied it. And the phrase, I don't even think it's a real phrase. It's just I like it, but it's the last straw is never the first straw.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what he implied about the losses to Edmonton and Vegas was like, no, he didn't fire Jim Hiller because they lost those 2 games.
Yeah.
There were a number of other reasons.
Yeah.
But that was the final straw. So, and it's, it's disappointing and it's rough, but what I am most curious about, and it's too early to tell because the players found out
this morning.
At about the same, like I woke up this morning to notifications on my phone that it happened. Which tells you what time I woke up today. So the players haven't had an opportunity to respond. I will be very curious to see in the coming days how the players respond, because all they could do today is stand there in front of the cameras and answer questions. But how much of this they do take on themselves will be, I would assume, evident, because there are only 23 games left. And, it's unfortunate that, I can't remember, I think it was DJ Smith told us that Darcy Kemper's been dealing with insomnia and jet lag, and he got ill, and then his kids got ill. Trevor Moore got sick, so it's like
there's something going around.
And it's and Kuzmenko goes out with an injury.
But then he said he's like, "Hey, we just lost to a Vegas team. Without these 5 guys." So he's like, "That's not an excuse for us." And he didn't make the excuse.
I mean, if you want to make the playoffs, you got to push through adversity. It's just unfortunate that all the adversity seems to be coming in this.
at the worst time for it. But,
absolute worst time.
But you know what? Didn't go so well because I think the Kings were probably among the healthiest teams in the league for 50 games. Like, they were facing teams without high-level players and losing. Mm-hmm. So it didn't go so well when they didn't have the adversity. So now we'll get a real test of what's in there, right? How do they respond to this kind of adversity?
And Ken Holland talked about the time he took to make the decision. And he talked about, I really actually liked his answer about whether or not he consulted any of the players. Yeah. And I thought that was,
it was a good answer.
I actually hadn't actually considered the possibility of what he said, but he basically said, like, if you talk to the star players and they tell you what they want you to do and then you don't do it, that's a whole other, and I was like,
you created your own problem.
Yeah, I was like, that's fair, so you just don't ask them.
Yeah.
But he did mention that he talked to Luc Robitaille, and what we'll never know and we'll never get an answer to is, but somebody asked, and it was, obviously hanging in the air, the powerful fan response during the Edmonton loss and following it. I have a hard time believing that didn't at least come up in the
conversation.
In the conversation. And while I don't think that you should make decisions based on fan discourse online, there's a tipping point. And I saw a lot of fans sharing screen grabs of emails that they had sent to the organization saying, I'm canceling my tickets or I'm not attending games anymore until this thing is done. And I understand why people would have that feeling, and just because I think the guy's a great guy doesn't mean anything to people. But I just wonder, and like I said, we'll never know how much impact that had. But that's, again, it's a business. And everybody, that struck me the most today is sometimes I think it's easy to forget, but like being in the locker room, I talked to 3 or 4 guys off the record, outside of Kempe and Kopitar. And the fact that this is a business and Ken Holland, the way Ken Holland dealt with it, the way DJ Smith dealt with it, the way everybody dealt with it.
And the way, honestly, if Jim Hiller was interviewed, he probably would have used the same line.
Mm-hmm. So it's a business. There's 23 games left. Trade deadline is the end of this week. Who knows? We'll see, I guess.
Yeah.
I did not expect this to happen. At the game last night, I interjected myself into a conversation between 2 other journalists debating whether or not it would happen, and I said no. So shows what I know.
I mean, I wasn't expecting it. I mean, the day that you would have expected it would have been Friday, which kind of aligned with the timeline of what happened.
Yeah.
It just, what Ken said made sense as to why they waited. Didn't burn him because they won the Calgary game, but also that game, because the decision was made, it had no impact.
Yeah. Which is reminiscent of what happened to Todd McClellan.
Right.
He won that, was it Nashville, I think?
He won the Nashville game after a string of defeats.
Mm-hmm. It's tough business, man. Tough business.
Yeah.
Zach, thank you for joining me. I think we're going to wrap it up there unless there's any other things you want to touch on.
Good
Kings fans, thank you. And again, we both urge you to go watch Ken Holland's availability and DJ Smith because I think it's worth it. I'm Jesse Cohen. Thanks for watching, Kings fans. We'll talk to you soon.